everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Martin Eiden team and Ask the Expert series. Today, I'm very excited for a couple of reasons. Number one, Sean, I'm doing it from my office, like the first time in a while. Number two, Sean awesomely left me this bowl of grapes because honestly, my like tight-fitting shirt, a button popped today, and the COVID. I did not feel good. Let me just put it that way. I did not feel good when a shirt button pops. Anyhow, special guest today. We have Pierre Wilson of Song Trust. And Pierre is going to talk to us today about the songwriting business, what's it take, what's to go into it, and all that stuff. So without further ado, Pierre, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the industry?
Sure. Thank you guys for having me, by the way.
Oh, no problem.
It's really cool being able to talk to non-creatives about the creative business process. So I'm really, really excited.
Real estate's very creative, by the way, Pierre. Just so you know.
This is true. So I wear multiple hats in the business. I am the co-founder and co-chair of the Brooklyn Composers Collective, which is a collective based out of here in New York City. I'm the co-founder and co-executive secretary of the employee resource group, Black Power and Music for Downtown Music Holdings. I'm a founding member of the collective, The Show Must Be Paused, which did the Blackout Tuesday after the murder of George Floyd, and called for accountability amongst the music industry. And then I am a client service associate at Song Trust. So I can speak more, in detail about what I do at Song Trust, and as far as the employee resource group that I help co-found. So with Song Trust, I work in a more client relations management realm, right? Okay. So I work with all stakeholders, whether it's the songwriter themselves, publishers, all the stakeholders internally, externally, to make sure that we are upholding our agreement, right? So our agreement is to, register and license your work with paid sources across the world, right? And then collect on your behalf. In a perfect world, that would be seamless, right? It's not always as seamless, which is why you need to bring in external partners, right? So, I have working relationships with our royalties team, with our legal team, with our product team, with our digital partners team, with our finance team. So that really kind of managing those relationships, our clients' expectations, but the main thing is kind of making sure that we are, again, abiding by the agreement that we've now gone into with either the songwriter themselves or a publishing entity.
I got you. So I just want to back up a little bit here for us. I just had to remove that swoop. I can see myself now. Anyhow, back up a little bit. So, and we had this on the pre-call that there are songwriters, right? And then there's people that produce the song or, sing the song, if you will.
Right.
Sometimes that's the same person and sometimes those are different people. And you gave us you gave me a really great example yesterday. And can you just kind of go back up and talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. So most people, I get this question from people all the time. What does a publisher do, right? Like, what do you guys actually do? And so the best way to kind of differentiate what I do versus, let's say, what a Def Jam does, right? Is Def Jam is a record label. Song Trust is a publishing administrator, right? So on the publisher administration side, I work directly with the songwriters and other publishers. Def Jam would work with the artists and the record label. So a great example that we use in the business is one of my favorite songs, and my cousin is actually on this call, is I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Right. So naturally, most people know Whitney Houston's version, right? So that's the master recording that we all know and love. However, Dolly Parton is the songwriter, right? She owns that composition. So who we work with is Dolly Parton in that composition, and then the label would work with Whitney Houston, and then the master recording.
Got it. So in that scenario, and in this case, it's kind of a fun example because you have really two famous singers here.
Right.
But so Dolly Parton wrote it. So if this is more, the discussion today is if you're into writing songs, right, which is, arguably a variation of poetry, I would, from a non-creative, from an outsider perspective, right? It's poetry to music, right? Is basically a song, if you will. And so you help the songwriters make sure that they get the royalties that they're entitled to and distribute it. And so if you write, so for example, with that song, if someone else would choose to sing it, they would have to go through Dolly Parton or her representation in order to sing it? If you're
right. So what would happen is, let's say somebody wanted to do another master recording of that song, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would then need to come to the publisher and say, hey, I need a mechanical license to reproduce this song, right? And so we would then have to give them a license, which basically gives them permission to reproduce that song. And
Gotcha.
then we would still get paid on the composition, right? So we would still get paid on the actual song, and then that artist would then collect on the master recording or that new recording of the song.
I gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Now, how do are there? I'm assuming there's people that are professional songwriters. This is what they do for a profession.
Mm-hmm.
How do they get into that, or how does that all work, or what?
I mean, so in the olden days, no, I'm talking about pre-2000, you would get signed to a publisher, right? Publisher would,
Okay.
scout you from, wherever, and then ultimately kind of put you in the room with other songwriters so that you can create music for a performing artist. Because again, in the olden days, there was a separation of the two, right? There were the songwriters, and then there was the performing artist. Now these people kind of a lot of them live within one body. But again, in the olden days, it was very segregated, where you had the writers and then you had the actual performing artists.
Okay.
Nowadays, it's with the proliferation of the internet, anybody can really write a song, put it up on YouTube, and really get discovered that way. Or you could use something like a Songstress where, so we have two different teams, two different client relations teams.
Okay.
One that actually would do the traditional kind of A&R, where you go out and you're looking for songwriters with big cuts, right? And trying to bring them on board. And then we have like a traditional kind of where you can just go through our website and agree to our terms and services, and we can administer your catalog that way. So I strongly urge, either one really kind of works. It just kind of depends on where you're at in the industry and where you're at, in your career, right?
Gotcha.
But if you're just starting out, I would always say just come in through the .com, because at least at that point.
I'm sorry, coming through the where?
Come through the website. Sorry.
Okay.
Because at least at that point, you can get your works registered. We can get them registered. You can get them registered on our site. We can then register them with the pay sources across the world, get them licensed so that you can at least start making some money. And then we really are the industry leader, because not only are we registering and license your works, but we really go out of our way to make sure that our clients are educated on music publishing. It is extremely complex. It's very nuanced. And so we really want to empower our clients to not feel that they need a major or a deal, to make a living doing what they love to do. So we have webinars, we post blogs, we really try to educate them as much as possible on the ins and outs of music publishing.
All right. So let me just ask you this a little bit. I just want to spend a few more minutes on songwriting, then I want to talk about other things, if that's okay with you, Pierre.
Oh.
So what exactly, how long is a song? How many verses is traditional with the, refrain? How do they have the music in their head already that they envision going with it? on how it would be sung, or is it just like, how does that work?
So I'll be completely honest on this call. I am not a songwriter. I work on the business side, okay? So I'm not going to tell you how many stanzas and, when you go to a chorus and this and that, I can't help you there. But, I can say that, we are noticing a trend where songs are becoming a lot shorter, right? So you're seeing songs that are like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, versus, again, let's talk about something like pre-2000, where a song was like 7 minutes long. So I don't think that there's any type of, requirement, right? Where a song needs to be this long. You could sing the same word over and over and over again, and that's a song, right? A
Right.
song really is just made up of the lyrics and the melody. As long as you have a lyric, which could really, again, be composed of one word, in a melody, you have a song.
Got it. So let's take, for example, my son, right, who who's 14, a
Mhm.
freshman. He likes to sing. And if he were to put the song together, right, that he likes, he would then contact Song Trust and register it with you guys.
Well, I mean, he would then contact, me directly. I would.
You
this is my
directly,
this is like my nephew. So,
right?
but yeah, he could do something like that. Now, there are some other kind of like nuances with Noble, where Noble's under 18, so we
Right.
wouldn't be able to pay out royalties to Noble because he's under the age of 18, or at least he wouldn't be able to use our direct deposit, which is
Repair
Payoneer.
to or something.
Payoneer requires that you would
Mhm.
have to be over 18 in order for them to do a direct deposit. So you and Sean would have to set up an account in your name so that we could collect those royalties that way, or just send them out a paper check. But yeah, I mean, listen, if he wrote a song, totally, he could just go through us and then at that point, really kind of learn. I've worked with plenty of young, and when I tell you young, I mean like 12, who make music in their room, and are like, hey, I want to make money. These kids are really smart nowadays, and they don't need the traditional guard that we needed. They know that they can just upload their stuff on, they can go through a DistroKid and get their stuff up on Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and TikTok and become a sensation. So, we're here to educate, the 12-year-old geniuses and the
Mhm.
70-year-old legends.
Quite a spectrum there. Quite a
Quite a
spectrum.
spectrum.
So what kind of so I just kind of want to go back for a minute. So what are some of the misconceptions people have about the way that music is made from your perspective?
I think the biggest misconception is people think that they need big productions and big names.
Okay.
And I always say what you need is a song and a story.
Okay.
That's where it always starts, no matter what. And what happens in the industry is people try to put the cart before the horse. It starts with the song. It doesn't start with your brand, it doesn't start with your name, it doesn't start with who's singing on the track. It starts with the song and the story. You need something that's going to resonate with people. If you don't have something that's going to resonate with people, it doesn't matter who's on the song, who sings the song, who produces the song. If it's not compelling, if it doesn't resonate, then it's not going to sell. So I think that's the biggest misconception, because I see a lot of artists where they just simply want to get somebody big, a big name on their song, or they want to get signed to a major label because they know that this label, has this big production company with them, or they want to get signed to a major publishing company because they know that they have a team, they have all the superstar songwriters, on their roster.
Got it.
That formula usually does it works more times than it doesn't, right? Where if
Hmm.
you get a big production team and a big songwriter and you put it with a talented artist, you might get a hit, you know, but you might not. So, but that's usually, to me, that's always been a misconception, is people kind of think that they need that big name, that big production company, and that big um, artists to kind of make their song pop. And it's like, no, the way the song's going to pop is by making sure that it actually resonates.
Right. And that starts with writing something authentic that you feel
Mm-hmm.
very strong about, right? Can you give us some examples of people that you worked with? You don't have to give specific names if you have that.
So
But
yeah,
like,
so I had looked that over, and I was like, you know what? In order to protect their right of privacy and
of
privacy,
course.
I won't give their names, but I have something even better. I'll give you some deals that we worked on. Because I've been in the industry. I've worked. I mean, now I work in client relations, but I got in the industry working in legal, so I've reviewed, drafted, negotiated a lot of agreements.
Mhm.
We've done a sync deal for Black Panther. We did a sync deal for CNN's Clive Davis, Soundtracks of Our Lives. We've done Lovecraft Country. We've done The Get Down. Um,
It's one of my
we have
favorites.
ownership stake in Kanye West's Jesus Walks. J. Cole samples a lot of the clients' works that we work with because the guy is a humongous jazz artist. So a lot of big names that you guys most likely know, but you definitely know the works that we've worked on, these deals that we worked on. So you've heard the works.
Got it. Got it. And where is the compensation coming from? Is it from Spotify and Apple Music now, or is it on like where are the royalties coming from?
Well, you got to look at so you got to think about copyright law, right? And so copyright
Mhm.
is broken down into kind of like three royalty types. So you have the mechanical, which means that anytime that the work is reproduced, you get paid a royalty off of that, right?
Okay.
You have the performance royalty, right? So anytime that there's a public performance of the work, right? So whether you hear the work on the radio, whether there's a live performance of the song, whether the song is played in a bar or at a club, right? You get royalty off of that. And then you get a sync, then there's a sync royalty, right? So when I talked about like the deal with Black Panther, so that means that when the music has now been synced to an audio visual, right? And so then that works in another kind of way, right? Where a sync deal is more so you get an upfront fee. So I say, hey, I want to use your song, in this movie. And then depending on the movie's budget, right? Depending on how big it is, depending on its reach, you could be making a lot of money, or if you're messing with somebody who's fairly new, doesn't have a lot of money, the sync deal might be like $500 on the front end, another $500 on the back end, right? And then you start collecting performance royalties on, as the show is played on TV or as the movie is played in theaters. So there's different streams of income which then determine when and how you're paid.
Okay. That makes sense. And what like what I mean what does what kind of income does a songwriter make? And I know that it varies dramatically, right? But
Yeah.
I guess the question is, and I don't know, that's why I'm asking you, like how many quote unquote professional songwriters are out there? Like this is what I do for a living and I support myself and or family with it.
So I'll give you one example. Client we work with, he's huge. Um, One, we've collected to this date $2 million. One,
Wow.
and
And
that's
that's
just
just
for the songwriter, right? And that's
wow.
just the cut. Uh, $2 million. So you can make a living. You can make a living. I mean, we have another client where
Sounds like you have a job in sales here.
I mean, listen, we have another client where he brings in, he literally has 30 seconds of an intro on a big YouTube video and 30 seconds on an outro. And he brings in $10,000 just in YouTube royalties every quarter. $10,000 for 30 seconds at the beginning of a video and 30 seconds at the end. So I mean, there's money to be made. There's
Mhm.
out there. But again, you gotta have something that's going to connect. Or in the YouTube, clients kind of realm, he's now attached himself to such a big brand that every
Mhm.
time every time it's getting views and ads are being placed on it, he's making a crap ton of money. So.
Got it. And do you and Song Trust guide them through this? Are you basically their agent, or how does that work?
We're not. We're actually not. As far as, they completely own their sync rights. So, any kind of deals that they're doing as far as getting their stuff synced to a brand or a video, we don't have anything to do with that. Our primary function is to get your works registered and licensed so that once it starts to generate money, we collect on it. The thing is that it's so complex and it's so nuanced that it's so hard to know unless you're in the thick of it. Where do I go where do I go to get this, to collect on Spotify, right? Most people don't know that, your work needs to be registered and licensed at the Harry Fox agency in order to collect in the US for Spotify. Okay, what about ex-US, right? What about if I'm in or Mexico or the UK or Latin America? And so it gets really complex, and that administrative work, a lot of artists don't want any part of. They want to make money, but it's like, how can I alleviate that administrative work so I can focus on the creative work? And so that's really where we come in at.
That makes sense. And is your fee a percentage, and what percentage is that, or how does that work?
Yeah. So we work over 15%, which is industry standard.
Okay.
As an admin fee. So anything we collect, any publisher shares that we collect, right? Any publishing royalties that we collect on their behalf, we take 15% off of that.
Okay. So,
which isn't bad.
No, that is. It's the cost of doing business. Now, tell me a story of someone or a song that was not registered and licensed and blatantly stolen, and that person is SOL.
Okay, so had a song, interestingly enough, where the song itself.
Oh, we just lost you.
Did you?
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're back in. You're back in. You're like just about to give the reveal.
The song itself was big, right? It won a Grammy. It won 3 Grammys. But the writer was actually signed to a major label. The label never registered the work, right? And so the client comes to us. This is when I was working at the firm, and he's like, "Listen, I need to get out of this deal because, I've just had, I want a Grammy for the album. I want a Grammy for the song, and this publishing company isn't even doing its job, right? Which is very simple. Register my work, get my work licensed so that I can collect royalties and recoup." And so most times when you're with a major label, they might give you an advance, right? So in this case, he did get an advance.
Okay.
But because they failed to register the work, they failed to license the work, he was unable to recoup the money that they had advanced him, right? Which then ties him up in this legal contract that's extending his contract far beyond, its limits, because they failed to do their job, right? They failed to do what they were supposed to do. And so we then had to work out a scenario to get him out of that agreement, right? If you did not do your part, then at that point, the agreement then becomes null and void. And so we're able to get him out that agreement. And I've actually had quite a few of those situations where, again, I think a lot of people think that because they're associated or tied to, this big publishing company, that they're going to do their job, right? Or because my song is a hit, they're going to do their job. Sometimes it just doesn't happen like that.
Wow. Okay. What advice do you have to give to artists? And I know this, I don't know, not to be stereotypical, but I know a lot of artists that feel that if they are working with somebody on the business end of it, like Song Trust, I'm giving up part of my creative control. I'm giving up control of I guess control is a big word that a lot of
No,
artists have.
control is the word, right? So the great thing, maybe I am a salesman. The great thing about Song Trust is that we all we do is admin, right? So you still own your copyright and you still have creative control. We are a publisher administrator. So again, the only thing that we are doing on your behalf is registering and licensing your work. You have complete creative control. You own your copyright full out. We don't own any part of it, right? But there's a chance that you could sign another deal where you go into what we call a co-publishing deal, and at that point, you are giving up part of your copyright. There's some parts. There's sometimes in an agreement where you might give up some control, right? So it really just kind of depends on the deal that you're entering into, which then goes into like this other thing where a lot of creatives either don't understand copyright law and what they actually own,
Mm.
or
What about the poor man copyright that what is it, mail yourself?
where you mail yourself again, you can do it. People have done it for years. I mean, and that's the other thing, right? Where people think that, I've worked with the U.S. Copyright Office, for a number of years now, but that's because I was working with, really big clients, and we were trying to find ways to make sure that in case we ran into legal issues, we had, a physical copyright at the U.S. Copyright Office, right? But you don't have to do that. The moment that your work is in tangible form, right? So the moment that you write the song, you have the copyright. That's what a copyright is. So the moment that you have it in physical, tangible form, which is why people do the thing where they mail it to themselves, right? So that it's kind of like some proof that it's in physical, tangible form. But once you have that, right? Once you create something, you have the copyright of it. So the Copyright Office is really kind of used, as a legal kind of backup, right? But it's not necessary every time.
All right, but advisable.
But advisable.
Got it. Now, just about, and then, wow, we're almost out of time. Was there anything that you wanted to say? I have like another question or two, but is there anything that hasn't been covered yet?
No. Honestly, I'm enjoying this.
Oh, great. Well, it's a very great conversation, right? So we're kind of in closing,
Wait,
go ahead.
So hold on. So actually, Jared sent me a question last night. And so he said, so Drake has a line in the song that says, "Everybody got a deal. I did one without one." And so he was like, what does he mean by that? Now, I was not in the writer's room. I cannot say what exactly Drake meant by that, but I can kind of deduce what Drake meant by that, right? So actually, Sean just put out an album that's now #1 in the country. Go check it out, Detroit too. I'm not a part of that team, but I love that album. I love Big Sean. And so there's a song called Friday Night Cypher. Eminem has this line where he says, if I would have gone the indie route, I have no doubt I would have still gotten it. So it's kind of in the same vein, right? Mm-hmm. Where Drake and Eminem are saying the same thing, where you guys essentially needed a deal. You needed a machine, right? You needed a label. You needed a publisher behind you in order to get big. And I did it without one, right? I did not need the machine to get big. Eminem saying, even if I would went the indie route, I would have still been a megastar, and that's kind of where things are kind of like shifting right now, right? And the internet's doing it's where, the barriers of entry have now lowered, where a lot of times you don't need the machine. Now, don't get me wrong, the machine is the machine for a reason, and it does work in a lot of ways, but people are now becoming much more educated on the business side, and they're saying, hey, well, I don't necessarily need the machine to promote and market my music. I don't necessarily need the machine to produce a hot track. I don't necessarily need the machine to write, a #1 song in the country. We've now witnessed that with Chance the Rapper, where he went completely indie, right?
Right.
so the guard is changing. And because the guard is changing, you know, the industry itself is kind of like looking like, oh, like what's next? If people are really, I mean, Drake's about to get out his deal very shortly. And so that's been the buzz all summer is Drake going to go completely independent? And if he goes independent, what happens to the entire music industry? Right. So Jared, that's what I think by that.
And with that, everybody,
Right on.
we're going to
Love
end
it.
it. Ask the Expert with Pierre Wilson of Song Trust, giving us some great insights on publishing music and a little bit of the business of the business. Afterwards, we'll have all of Pierre's information on this for the rebroadcast. And reach out to him if you have questions and want to write a song and want to get it out there. Thank you so much, Pierre.
Thank you guys. This was awesome.